World War III, the improved bunker buster missiles dug through the earth, exploding and destroying the nearly completed Iranian nuclear launch sites and energy plants one by one, fired by British, US, and Israeli jets soon after most of the SAMs, mobile and stationary, had been neutralized. Russia, from Georgia, immediately sent out interceptors, but our spent attack jets had already flown west and had thus evaded, eventually landing on carriers in the Persian Gulf. Yet the Russians' interceptors still attacked the fleet there, first engaging an insufficient number of interceptors of our own. However, Aegis-descendant computerized firing systems more than decimated the incomings, and so they retreated. Cruise missiles continued to pour into Persia, leveling much of the culture that had withstood 100 invasions by melding with the conquerors. The Iranian clergy, who were also the rulers, ordered Israel wiped off of the map, as they had so often proclaimed and were going to do anyway, this in fact having been the very germ of their impending doom. They had 2 secret missile silos left, which actually had been completed and were fairly operational, more than enough to do the job. Both were beneath the world-sacred Persiolopolis historic site of irreplaceable monuments, installed there under the cover of archaeological digs. By now, all satellites, pro and con, had been blasted from orbits about the Earth. Replacements were already on the launch pads, but for now, the world was blind from space. The outgoing president of the US sat back satisfied. Lesky rushed in, saying, "There are 2 more. I've just heard from Graham's mind. We have nuclear activation amid the megaliths of all places." The ancient ruins began caving in as the giant doors opened, revealing another set of doors below, the missile silo surely within those. "How, Lesky? The EMP has disrupted many of the electronics. Our minds know each other from our research together." The president signaled for Phase 2 preparation, the nuclear retribution for an atomic attack on Israel, who too would begin their own nuclear launches upon detection of an attack. "Just a preparedness move, Lesky," stated the president. "Alert your people. I heard they can see in the dark. We, though, are dumb, deaf, and blind for the moment. Our jets have left, and those still in the area are yet engaged. The Russians must have seen this coming somehow. Plus, electromagnetic pulses have rendered auto-sighting and navigation rather difficult for the time being." Lesky replied, "No need, for they are the ones who just told me via mind. They will act on their own. I dare not distract them now." Graham stood atop a mountain peak deep within Iran, and flicked on his lighter for 5 seconds, for his long-range radio would not function. Graybeard, on another peak, looking there right at that moment, saw it from 50 miles away, for there were many more photons than required. A location signal followed.
Rascal had already blown the sand off his jet, that being its camouflage, even though he was covering an unlikely area. But his instructions did say to expect the unexpected. Graybeard passed the word of the increased activity about Persiolopolis. His short-range radio working fine, as expected, plus the sending via his mind as well. And Rascal's jet soon hovered, moving upwards, and flew out of the rising moon toward the historical site and center from which great learnings had spread across the world over 1,000 years ago. Graham's long-range radio began to work for a minute. "Did you get it, Graybeard? All the details?" "Yes, your signal confirming mine. The jet is now very much on its way." Bulldozers were already clearing the historic debris from the lower door. Underneath, technicians began the preparations to launch their medium-range nuke of destruction. The countdown had begun. A live SAM site quickly appeared in the jet's path, but Rascal's pilot knew what to do. The jet headed in low and swerved from its course, jamming all signals, then flew right over the SAM site and took it out. It was a gamble, but there wasn't time for anything else. The lower doors opened, revealing the sturdy missile silo underneath, as did those of another, just a mile away. With the jet now over the first site, Rascal pressed a button and fired directly into it, using his one and only nuke-busting weapon, for it was so large that he could only carry one. It did the trick. Rascal was then horrified to hear about the second site. "Now what?" asked Rascal's pilot. "We're out of nuke busters." Rascal replied, "The jet itself is a weapon due to its speed, bulk, and fuel." "Will do." The jet headed straight down and precisely into the second site, blowing itself and the launch site to smithereens, and also to Kingdom Come. However, Rascal and his pilot did not die or get injured, as of course they never do in these stories. How could this be? They did not eject or anything like that.
In the World War III story, Rascal and his pilot had about 4 minutes to save the world. Madonna even made a song about it. Rascal and his pilot survived, for they were never in the jet in the first place, but had flown it remotely, from a console, as a drone, such as those employed in Iraq and Afghanistan, although it was the improved model with a larger payload. Of course, it had good autopilot capabilities as well. Since many more answers than the above were quite applicable, I am sending all such responders a crummy toy car as a prize. Rascal lives and is now heading to Pakistan, the Taliban. Iran had been thwarted, but the roots of evil planted by humankind were deep and thriving in other forms and places in the world. 'Twas a critical moment, for World War III was ever on the verge, the axis of evil lingering on, although greatly crippled by the Allies and the covert Ninja World Empire. In Pakistan, another factory and its workers had been bombed by the Taliban, their commander even being brazenly present to witness the carnage of 200 dead or injured. RP Bibra, tailing them, had taken a video. There had been no way to stop them in time, so his heart yet fell into the bottomless pit. Although he'd witnessed much of the same over the years, he had never acclimated to the evil. This latest event was still as shocking as the first he'd ever known. Musharraf's forces pursued the Taliban, but they didn't catch them, for soon the Taliban countered, with more help, and overtook their pursuers, as the sad historic tales of human folly continued to be written in blood. A strange aside is that Musharraf's parents had often played bridge with Austin's parents in Illinois in the 1990s. True. Small world. And so the ninja had been allowed a deep penetration into Pakistan. Islamabad was aflame and had within days become a war zone, hordes of Taliban pouring in from the mountains of Afghanistan and eventually overwhelming the city. Greybeard and Rascal Puff appeared in Grandmaster Cynthia's Eastern Field Command office, she recognizing Greybeard from his vacation photos on TowQuest, and Rascal from knowing his description of how he would now look. Greybeard, somewhat anxious, hung back, while Cynthia, sweet as ever, though yet renowned in her cover as the infamous Deathhead feared worldwide, addressed Rascal the Puff, the magic dragon master and butterfly of forever. My pleasure to meet you at last, Master Rascal, worker of miracles unimaginable. We must work together on this one, for I know the region well. At your service, Miss Commander Cynthia, level 7, and congratulations on your promotion to Grandmaster. I noted it on TowQuest. Thanks, and no need for formality, Puff. Might I lighten the mood by asking how it is that your jets are often destroyed? For they cost us $40 million each. The jets often seem to elude me. Yes, one near DC and then another in Persia over in the root of evil thread. I am so sorry. We have a new one for you. Please take good care of it. I always try to, and I will surely be much more responsible in the future. They couldn't help but all burst into laughter, for the act of saving the world was indeed priceless.
The Taliban had overtaken the nuclear missile complex south of Islamabad just the night before, which was why Rascal and Greybeard had arrived. The site was a mile deep and was therefore bomb-proof, even by the bunker digger busters. It had even survived a direct nuclear missile hit by India a year ago. A truce between them was still in effect though, but the Taliban of course had control of the site now, as well as of the entire surrounding region. The Taliban commander was en route, and this certainly did not bode well, so haste was made waste, with the final plans being concocted along the way. The site contains a long-range, multiple-warhead nuclear missile that can reach any point on the globe, Cynthia advised. Launch is imminent, so we must be off and away, answered Greybeard, and you don't look at all how I pictured you. Cynthia wished them well. Godspeed, all is ready. The next day, Rascal, from deep inside the nuclear site itself, defused the intended launch, and furthermore rendered the site inoperable, also planting a bomb in it, then left, and was seen boarding the jet on the landing strip, his pilot already within. The jet soon took off, then crashed into the mountains a short distance away. Confirmation of the dead were then made by the Taliban, nothing unexpected being noted. Their funerals were scheduled for the morrow. Just thereafter, the nuclear site imploded, and all hell broke loose. Later that night, back at Eastern Field Command, Rascal, Greybeard and Cynthia sat down for a drink and toasted the mission. Cynthia drank only Canada Dry ginger ale. "Another mission, another jet destroyed," laughed Cynthia. "Darn things just don't last," added Greybeard. "Well, no one was even close so far. We do know, though, that by now Rascal is much afraid of flying." The answer: Cynthia's Eastern Field agents had intercepted the Taliban commander based on RP Bibra's intel, while he was on approach to the Islamabad nuclear site, substituting Rascal, who had already been pretty much made up to look like him even by the time he had arrived in Cynthia's office. It was not that difficult to impersonate the commander, for a beard covered most of the face, and a robe covered most of the body. SB_UK applied a few finishing details as the jet flew to the site, carrying Rascal, his pilot, Greybeard, SB_UK, the captured Taliban commander, and another Taliban.
While underway, Rascal had perfected the commander's voice imitation and learned his gestures there, and also from RP's video. The language was a problem, but Rascal had learned the word yes, since any prompts to the commander at the site would most likely just be formalities of that nature. Rascal would mostly gesture anyway and try to look very serious. Additionally, Rascal knew that great leeway would be given to the commander, as his personage was considered holy. A search would have been out of the question, plus the entire situation at the site was that of complete disarray, they having all just taken it over the day before. Well, of course, Rascal was let into the site and taken down to the control room, where he waved all away but for the main control person, whom he soon disabled. It was then a simple matter to inactivate the controls by some tampering and plant a bomb that he had carried in under his robe. Leaving the site, Rascal boarded the jet, one designed with Taliban markings noting the two Taliban, one the commander, both knocked out and propped up in their seats. Rascal activated the takeoff autopilot and exited out the other side of the plane into a service vehicle manned by Greybeard. They drove off, picking up SB_UK, who was both a lookout and a backup, for he had mixed and poured universal acid into the ventilation system, a method that would disable the site as well, but just for a while and at a much slower rate. The jet took off on its own and crashed into a mountain as designed, after which the bodies of the Taliban commander and pilot were recovered. A state funeral was planned, at which time Musharraf's forces would likely attack, for RP was still tailing and telling on them. The nuclear site then imploded, our good ninja friends making their way far away during the confusion. Well, no one got this exact right answer, since no one cared about the contest, although Lesky reported a gland having something to do with it, but I'm still granting the prize of an annual and complete one-year trip around the sun to every TowQuest member.
The bunker buster missiles dug through the earth in Iran, exploding and destroying the nearly completed Iranian nuclear launch sites and energy plants one by one. Fired by British, US and Israeli jets, soon after most of the SAMs, mobile and stationary, had been neutralized. Russia immediately sent out interceptor jets, but our spent attack jets had already flown west and had thus evaded them, eventually landing on aircraft carriers in the Persian Gulf. Yet the Russian jets still attacked our fleet there, first engaging missiles of our own. Then Aegis-descendant computerized firing systems more than decimated the incoming Russian jets. Cruise missiles continued to pour into Iran, leveling much of the Persian culture that had withstood 100 invasions by melding with the conquerors.
All good things must come to an end. Earth couldn't be farther out in space, alone. In all directions it rolls along, unknown. Look at the stars piercing the depths of time. They beckon, warm and welcome, the fires of home. Sometimes the road is too long or the path too far, and suddenly the whims of fate are upon one, as either a curse or a blessing, eventually even toward the final benediction that ever calls. Rascal Puff had assigned himself yet again to a major task of short notice, tempting the fates to counter the serendipity of his karma in the face of a probability that had no memory. Yet, Nona, who spun the thread of life from her distaff onto her spindle, was sound asleep, but Decima was active and measuring the thread of Rascal's life with her rod, and Morta, the cutter of the thread of life, was choosing the manner of his death. The incessantly turbulent world was still turning and overturning in and of its perpetual emotion. The personifications of destiny had recently visited doom on the earth. North Korea had gone nuclear and had thus been reduced to rubble. Iran, the birthplace of the arts, was but a memory. Iraq was still in civil war, its oil fields burning and useless. The Taliban yet threatened to take over Pakistan. The ice caps were nearly gone. The Russians were acting as Soviets once again. Rascal was in a stealth jet that was flying over the heart of Russia, adjusting his oxygen tanks. The pilot looked back at Rascal saying, "You don't like jets, do you?" "Not especially. I think I'll get off." 2 minutes. The jet slowed. Rascal was out the door and then free, falling into and through the foreign darkness. Ah, there it was. Hard to miss, for it was lit up like a Christmas tree at a carnival. Rascal flared his body and headed over and down toward the KGB maximum security prison, floating for a minute or two, then deployed his black chute and steered himself into the center of the very large roof, and then after landing used some heating equipment as a shield. The eyes of the corner towers had all been looking outward and downward, oblivious to the inward and upward directions. Was this not always the case with mankind? Rascal traversed the large ductwork, making some innocuous marks near the twists and turns that would guide him back out for his escape. He soon found his way into the heating plant, standing there but a few seconds before a guard walked by. The guard continued on, noting Rascal with tool in hand, wearing the right worker clothes and bearing an ID. In a while, a work crew of sorts was passing by, and so Rascal fell in behind them as they all headed into the cell blocks to relieve some masonry workers, many of the doors shutting and locking behind them. Rascal spotted the prisoner that he was after, noting a spare bed in the adjacent cell. He pretended to inspect some cement work near the cell. Shortly thereafter, the cells opened to let the men out for early morning exercise, and Rascal slipped into that adjacent cell, then removed his maintenance uniform to reveal the orange prison clothes underneath, and pretended to sleep while refining his plan. It was not often that someone broke into prison. The exit, well, that might be a bit more difficult, but hopefully routine.
The prisoners were returned after an hour or so, and the guards left, not even noticing the additional inmate. Rascal motioned the prisoner of interest to come to the bars that separated their cells, and then managed to loop a wire around the man's neck, hinting that it would tighten if he screamed out. Rascal spoke gently. "Now, mind you, I already know some of the answers to the questions that I'm going to ask you, so if I catch you in a lie, the noose tightens a lot. Got it? On the third lie, you die." "Yes," the man moaned. "Did you send a look-alike to Argentina to interchange with Frederick?" "No." The wire was pulled taut, and the man began gagging, soon changing his answer to yes. The wire loosened, but not a lot, just enough to allow for breathing. "Well, we caught him. Did you know that your so-called improved Botox factory self-destructed?" "What? No." "I believe you. for you were imprisoned here before that occurred. You are in here due to theft? Yes, I knew that. Times must be tough for the conspiracy. What was to be the imposter's mission? I don't know. The wire dug into the man's neck, causing some bleeding as the man almost passed out. Remember, we caught him, he talked. Now answer the question so I can know if I can depend on you. By the way, we deactivated his self-destruct mechanism. He was to find and infiltrate the TO center, or rather, have them find him and bring him there for some emergency. It wouldn't have worked. Why? If I told you, I would have to kill you. The very tight wire loosened a bit. So I see that you don't know the exact location of the TOE center. Then what was to happen? He would gain entrance quickly without being checked thoroughly to help with the crisis. Then he would send us all the TOE data. What crisis? Random mortar strikes on Oahu. We have people around. I believe you, for we just took them out recently. Oh my. What is your backup plan? The wire grew tighter. None. More bleeding began. Wait. The wire eased up a bit. There is always a backup plan. Stop being foolish. Death comes next. We have some knowledge of the backup plan. This is your last chance. The noose tightened. We borrowed a nuclear submarine from the Russians. It is near to sitting deep and undetected in an ocean trench. When is the attack? The wire tightened a bit. Today, imminent, even as we speak. It's unstoppable by you, seeing as you are in a Soviet prison. Terrorists will be blamed. If we can't get the TO, then no one can have it. This is truly the last gasp of your sad organization, isn't it? Yes, our bases are in total disarray, one could say. Where are your autonomous sites? Even I don't know that. True. Millions will die on Oahu. Have you no conscience? The leader could not answer. Wrong answer. One last gasp, and the man who led the conspiracy was no longer a threat to anyone. Rascal let him down slowly to his bunk to sleep forever in the land of oblivion and regret.
Rascal's exit strategy was now a total mess, for he couldn't wait around for its scheduled happening. Was the third shift work crew coming on soon? He could slip out with the crew shift change. Would they check his ID as he left? Yes, and it wouldn't be in the computer, nor would they have a record of his entering. Rascal did what he had to do, which was what one would never do, and live. He took out his transmitter and sent the necessary information to Cynthia at Eastern Field Command, who then relayed it to #1 East in Turkey and on to Nihao to Grandmaster #1 West. Of course, this transmission would be noticed at the prison as well as elsewhere. They would be up here in a matter of minutes. So much for doing the impossible once again. Necessity had been the mother of this impromptu convention of invention that would surely become Rascal's last battlefield. Indeed, Rascal is on his own, as he went on his own, for there could be no help in the alerted time whence he resides now. Between a rock, a hard place, and an abyss. Yet we are of miracles made, and there is always a chance, however slim, for goodness to triumph in this crumbling world. For Rascal is indeed a man of destiny. So roll on, fate. Rascal led a glorious life, but wait, there is a spur-of-the-moment plan brewing. Can Houdini return? Rascal, after changing back to his work clothes, remotely blew off all the explosives on the prison roof that would have aided and covered his escape into the sky. Luck would have its way now or not. Glorious defeat was long overdue and was now looming at the cell door. All hell soon broke loose, the minimal night guard shift running in total up the stairs toward the roof. Some smoke and flames shot out of the heating vents. Rascal quickly finished the lasering of the cell bars that he had previously nearly cut all the way through, then carefully put them back as a kind of joke on whomever leaned against them. Then he quickly lasered shut the stairway door to the roof, welding it totally inoperable, and then ran down the hallways with the evacuating work crews. Elf waves went out from Nihao to the fleet, and the hunt was immediately underway. Subs plunged into the dangerous depths of the ocean trench. Go too deep and you would never come back. The conspiracy sub was a suicide sub, nearly in its place after probably following the deep trench for a day or so, from which it could never surface, but could still launch from, its missiles unstoppable at such a short range. Arriving at the front door checkout station with the work crews, Rascal could see freedom outside, but there was a holdup. The prison was going into lockdown. No one could leave, although a few already had. These intermediate times of chaos and uncertainty were the best times to act. So Rascal fired his mini machine gun into the checkout station, blasting the door window beyond too, then dove through it and ran on out the next to last door that led to the lobby, carefully welding it shut afterwards, imprisoning all within, prisoners of their own prison. Startled would-be visitors hit the floor as Rascal raced out the main doors, welding them shut too. Fire engines and police were already racing toward the prison, and the officers would surely round up anyone wandering about outside this disaster.
Rascal looked up at the guard towers, expecting to be shot, but the men in the towers were now all looking inward to the roof that was in flames. My kingdom for a horse, he thought. He gently removed an old lady from her car and drove off leisurely toward the oncoming emergency vehicles, a half a mile or so, even pulling to the side of the road so that they could pass, and stayed there. The police would soon be upon everyone anyway, their emergency escort duties having greatly diminished. There was a grove of trees with huge mountains beyond. There could be no more driving, of course, since there would be roadblocks everywhere, not to mention the checking of anyone who drove at night in this suspicious country. The elegance of his former escape plan had escaped as well, yet here he was, breathing the air of the free. Rascal crawled along the ground, then crept through the beginning of the forest and was soon up and onto the slight slope leading to the mountaintop. The news of a wild worker blasting his way out would soon be known to all, so Rascal took off his work clothes and then rolled them up, covered them with mud and threw them down a deep gully. No use leaving any ready clues, although the dogs would find them eventually. He laughed at himself now, being clad in bright prison orange. He got rid of his overshirt, then cut his pants into shorts and turned them inside out. In glee, he noted that the lining was gray inside. He now looked like kind of a normal person out for a stroll, instead of a blazing target. There could be no more radio transmissions, he was on his own. Up the hill and then the mountain steep he went steadily but unhurriedly, for there was no need for exhaustion yet. An hour later he was close to the top. Which way to go? My kingdom for a moment to activate my cell phone and check its GPS, but it would have been a death warrant, for the total story of his treachery was probably already well known within the prison and without the land. No rescue party could venture forth to help him now. Not willing to risk the main trail, Rascal took off on a deer trail, for they knew what they were doing. US satellites would have detected the prison's problem by now, indicating to the Ninja Empire that Rascal's plans had changed. Putting some distance in between was now the chief objective, so Rascal moved quickly, ever onward, sensing direction from the stars of the night sky. These, the fires of home, would guide him to his end, for whatever had brought him here to life would have to take him home. His time on Earth as a shimmering rainbow of stardust had been unsurpassable. He had walked for 20 hours, living on nourishment from streams, plants, and edible berries. The second night was at hand, the best time for travel, and so he did another 12 hours, then made a cover and slept for 12, now half dead. Death retreated, as its fair brother, sleep, restored him to health. Now where, through thousands of miles through the motherland, he would risk a 3-blip signal in another day or two. He walked on. Several times Rascal heard helicopters approaching and had to hide, noting the fully armed ships and the Russians inside peering out. After 4 days, they came no more.
What the heck? Rascal, come out from wherever you are. How did you guys get this? You don't want to know. Hop aboard. I know it's old, but we tuned it up well. Do we have enough fuel, Robert? Maybe not. But we will fly at low altitude to avoid curiosity and to conserve fuel. We've added extra tanks, but I hate the uncertainty principle. We'll be looking for a NATO freighter pulling out of port. We can't land on that. No, but we will anyway. Who made this plan? A fiction writer? Yes, and it was the best we could do on such short notice. I even took the weekend off from work. I see no pursuit. The Russians must have heard my blips. They did, or just about did, as we knew they might, so we instantly sent out more blips by remote control from transmitters all over the place. Fortunately, they're still tracking down the wrong ones, or have given up. Do you know how to fly this thing, Robert? No, for the pedals are reversed. You're getting used to this? Heck no, I just reversed my feet, crossing my legs over. Crikey. Many hours later, they were on approach to the coast, the fuel gauge already having read empty for the last 20 minutes. Robert, how are we running on no fuel? As with new American cars, the gauge is offset ahead a bit so one has time to get to a gas station. This is not a car, and we are in Russia, and we are using an old Soviet machine. Oops. They cleared the coast, but the freighter was not in sight. Now what? The freighter probably got delayed by typical Russian red tape. It may be yet coming out of the harbor, though. Do we have any subs around? Not this close in. Are we heading out to sea? Yes, we can float on a raft. There's a huge storm coming in. Okay, we'll turn around. You were going to do that anyway. Yes, better to float on a raft closer to shore or land. The helicopter then gained as much altitude as it could, and then the fuel gave out. Great Mother of England.
Hold on, I see the ship racing out. We're going to land on a freighter without a landing pad with no fuel? The rotors will slow our descent. Not good enough. I turned off the fuel when I heard a sputter. We probably have about 30 seconds worth left. And you're going to turn the engines back on just in time. Yes, you are certainly a fearless leader, Robert. Is this going to work? No sweat. I play video games. Cripes. Is the freighter going to slow down or stop? No, that would look suspicious. Double cripes. I never thought calculus would be of any use, so I didn't take it. Neither did I. Crimey sakes, where did you get these cripes things? You're not from Australia. I get them from Boots of Toe Quest. Oh, quick rascal. Move to my side and follow me out. Robert, I'm going to ring your... I'll close one of your threads. Okay, never mind.
The helicopter then gained as much altitude as it could, and then the fuel gave out. Great Mother of England.
Hold on, I see the ship racing out.
We're going to land on a freighter without a landing pad with no fuel.
The rotors will slow our descent.
Not good enough.
I turned off the fuel when I heard a sputter. We probably have about 30 seconds worth left.
And you're going to turn the engines back on just in time.
Yes.
You are certainly a fearless leader, Robert. The freighter was just making it into international waters, running at flank speed now, with the gliding copter heading dangerously downward for it. Is this going to work?
No sweat, I play video games.
Cripes. Is the freighter going to slow down or stop?
No, that would look suspicious.
Double cripes. The two moving crafts were converging rapidly. I never thought calculus would be of any use, so I didn't take it.
Neither did I.
The helicopter was literally spiraling down to the rendezvous to crash as Robert restarted the engines, slowing it somewhat, then a bit more. The freighter crew had removed some railings to give some more room to land. The copter hovered, then fell the last few feet as the fuel gave out, then slid a few feet over toward the open edge, the right side hanging out over the sea.
Quick, Rascal, move to my side and follow me out.
They got out and noted the helicopter teetering and tottering. Robert put one finger against it, pressing no harder than the force of a butterfly's wing flap, and sent it sliding into the sea.
Don't need this piece of junk anymore. Have to get rid of the evidence anyway. As Rascal landed on the helipad in Nihao, he thought, "My God, it's been over 5 years since I've seen my old master. Where did the time go? Whence have all these roots of evil sprouted?" The scent of hibiscus blossoms flavored the balmy air. It seemed like heaven. Grandmaster West walked out slowly but surely, now using a cane, and was ethereally framed by the glow of the setting sun. He looked much older, although still vibrant with a kind of deep calm, if those two traits could be present at the same time. A cascade of wondrous memories swept over them both, of the early days, the tough days, the triumphs and the glorious failures, but ever always with the everlasting gladness of life's being washing over them with its goodness. "I heard that you took a very long walk, Rascal, for one of your age." "I had to, but it was indeed grueling, Master. Goodness drove you on, for in that there is strength." "I suppose it did. I have to pull you off field command." "What?" "I love this job. Well, maybe not the last 2 weeks." "You were the best." "Why then?" "I'm giving you my job. You are now #1 West." "Huh? I am fading. I am 99 years old." "What? You don't look it." "I kept in shape and ate right, but now the time has come. Although I will still be around here for a little while to show you the ropes." Reports come in. You read between the lines. You could live another 10 years. Not likely, but all good things end, and for you, Rascal, they end when better things become. But Rascal felt a presence behind him, but he didn't turn around. "1,000 monks have just crept up on me," Rascal surmised out loud. "They are our 3rd graduating class. Tomorrow they go forth to the 4 winds to keep their eyes and ears open. They will even sense without turning about, just like you just did."
Ni hao, Hawaii, the master said. "The world yet rolls like a snowball toward the gates of hell." Half of the monks came around behind the master's side to form a complete circle, 5 rows deep, bowing both to the new and the old #1S. "How will I do this, Master?" "Rascal, remember when you first came to us so long ago, having ridden so far and alone on a bicycle in the dark?" "Yes, I could never forget that night." "It's the same now, only you ride in the light." "Master, who is that man yonder sitting on that hill?" "He is our founder, Thomas Vale. He will visit with us shortly." "Nowhere man, he is legend. No one has ever seen him. None but us." Trish, #1 East, materialized somehow, next to West, her shimmering form changing to Nona, the thread spinner of life, then back. Or perhaps this was just in Rascal's imagination. "Grandmaster East, you sent the chopper. Thank you. We thought we should cut you some slack." She took a step to the side as the master removed his sword, lightning fast, holding it aloft. Rascal held out both hands, worried that he might lose an ear as the sword came down on his shoulder, but it was already there, Rascal not having seen it move. The master then laid the sword in Rascal's hands. "I accept the job, Master, and swear to protect the Earth and its people." "More than that, Rascal, old friend. You must protect eternity. You are the guardian of forever now, and you stand at the edge of the abyss, warding off the oblivion of evil." "Where will I find you after you leave here, Master?" "I will be with the wind and flow as the water, and so you shall know me when you feel the breeze and quench your thirst in the stream." "Light, light, my light, the world-filling light, the eye-kissing light, heart-sweetening light. Ah, the light dances, my darling, at the center of my life. The light strikes, my darling, the chords of my love. The sky opens, the wind runs wild, laughter passes over the earth. The butterflies spread their sails on the sea of light. Lilies and jasmines surge up on the crest of the waves of light. The light is shattered into gold on every cloud, my darling, and it scatters gems in profusion. Mirth spreads from leaf to leaf, my darling, and gladness without measure. The heavens' river has drowned its banks, and the flood of joy is abroad. Tagore. The root of evil. We see many good and bad things directly, person to person, via the actual. Such are the good civil laws and good human values taught. The problem becomes when we see from no direction but the imagined via the unreal. These good things, merely pronounced, also define their bad counterpart. One then forgets their source, leaping into adoption, becoming with them one. Thus the ideas must be protected. Anger arises toward the contrary, as emotion stains the brain. Then evil is done in the name of good. All these good things eventually come to a bloody end. Rascal is on the peak of Nihao, using all of his know-how to prevent a bad and ugly face from infecting the human race.
On the way out of Honolulu, we, as Ostino and Pasiona, noted thousands upon thousands of monks spaced about 10 feet apart along the road to the airport. Someone important would be coming by in a while. The monks were in the airport too, and on the tarmac as well, many even along the runway. We were waiting to board when some music started playing in our heads, an angel-like triumphant choir of joy. "How do we hear music?" she asked. "As if we had earphones from iPods." "It's the old Grandmaster, he can do that. See that man getting out of the limo and approaching the black jet? That's him? Yes. He retired at age 100 from the leadership of the Ninja Empire to do some other things within or without." "What things?" "Well, let's just say that I wouldn't want to be the head of state where that plane lands. The jet has missiles attached. It has 16 fire and forget Hellfire missiles on it, plus 3 other firing systems on it. That particular jet is called the Angel of Death. Where is he going? No one knows, but wherever he goes, the world will be a much better place after he does whatever he has to do. Will it be done with the jet? No, not likely, unless attacked. How then will this one old guy do anything? He will arrive on the breeze as soft as the wind, bestow his blessing, then evaporate like the water afterwards, for the most part hopefully never seen and never known. Or he will die trying. Perhaps, but then all the other Grandmasters will try in turn. Godspeed. I'll tell you the whole story on the flight back to Chicago. These are desperate times. 13.75 years of evolution are at stake, for we have not yet colonized space. We're not going to make it? The TOW Center was able to determine the future of humankind, given the present state. And humankind again had no future, for they no longer existed.
The populace of the new Iran could no longer be shielded from the real world by the clerics and the Holy Supreme Leader, for they had the internet and had even adopted some of the freedoms of Western ways. Yet, the crackdowns had still been working to some extent. But when the nuclear reactors had been destroyed, the billions wasted on their construction had become quite apparent, as well as the fact that Iran had plenty of oil and didn't even need them but to attempt destruction. Yet, to easily squash this sentiment, the clerics stirred up some of the old anti-American feelings and added to the ever-present hatred of Israel as well, since both of them had participated in the attack on the reactors. One more was secretly under construction. Furthermore, they closed the Straits of Hormuz, first by just declaring it, and more finally through a naval battle in which they, of course, lost, which blocked it. Even though the center of the straits was in international waters, it had become clogged with the debris of sunken ships and had become totally unusable. Non-nuclear missiles, some containing poison gas, had meanwhile been launched upon Israel, doing quite a bit of death and damage. Israel then laid waste to more of Iran. At first, the Sunnis did not so much mind the downfall of the Shiites, but for their joint antagonism for the West. But then Israel repelled more attacks from the other Arab nations, and then some, as in 10 eyes for an eye. The Shia and the Sunni soon united against their common enemies to have OPEC halt all shipments of oil. Several months later, a massive Allied invasion of the Middle East began, while the Arabs began a counterattack against Israel and even set fire to their own oil fields lest they be captured. Israel, about to be overrun, used tactical nukes on the approaching hordes, as well full nukes on the Middle East. Now the oil fields were also radioactive, and so of no use whatsoever for hundreds of years. During the war, the world's reserve oil supplies had much dwindled, the remaining pumps unable to keep up with the demand, much of it going to the military or to the rich. But they, too, eventually began to go dry. Russia mobilized, it still having oil. However, cruise missiles fired from Allied nuclear subs then destroyed its military and its refineries. In the years to come, all the world's economies failed. A minor nuclear winter ensued, infrastructures fell apart, and chaos and disease did away with much of the Earth's population in time. Global warming then climaxed and flooded what was left of all coastal cities. Canada became subtropical and thus became a refuge for a few good humans. Those left began to live simple. They hunted game and supplanted it with whatever they could grow or find. They were perhaps of a new genesis, the germ of a new world, one focused on the actual living of life. For the old distractions were now few and far between.
The religious zealot kneels on his prayer mat talking with Allah for the 6th time today. The mission is on. Many non-believers will die. The bomber purifies himself, ready to enter paradise, sure of a higher place near the great Allah. The zealot stands up. Takpara shoots him dead. Tajpara easily entered one of the new and nearly complete Iranian nuclear facilities as its new janitor, having replaced the former one exactly by using the improved Botox. He began replacing the innards of the battery-operated floodlights that were for power outages. Soon they contained bombs, all 16 of them, and were near enough to the main pillars to bring down the entire structure from within. This was the only way, for there were 5 levels of reinforced steel and concrete above, which ensured that what had happened the last time could not happen again via any kind of bunker buster bombs. Takpara would activate all the timers, then depart this job as best he could. He even wrote a new Broadway musical play as he bided his time, then provided rhyme for all of John Milton's blank verse. Mid-morning finally arrived. This was it. He sent the signal to the timers and then wheeled his janitor cart towards the elevators. He boarded along with 2 important-looking officials, and the elevator headed up to the top. Said one to the other, "Our supreme leader has spoken to Allah and has received approval for the complete destruction of Israel." Just about then, they all heard the loud rumbles of the coordinated explosions, then the thunderous collapse of the imploding building as all of its layers pancaked when the support pillars were all blown away. Takpara suggested that perhaps Jehovah was much displeased with Allah. Only the elevator stuck out of the dusty rubble, the door opening 6 stories above the now airy pit. The 2 officials quickly ran out into the dust and fell through the open air to their deaths, joining all those below that were trapped within. Takpara was soon rescued and sent by ambulance to a hospital. He decided to go to an airport instead, writing a brand new opera along the way. Then he went about solving the financial crisis, for he had a few hours to spare. The ultra-orthodox Wahhabi sect of Islam had spread like an unruly weed across the country and beyond, choking out all forward and rational thinking, silencing all dissenters within and without the faith, and damning millions of people to a belief system that had more in common with the Stone Age than the 21st century. The flawed concept of good that now included the ever more increasing wishes of Allah, of course, had led to all of the contrary as being labeled and seen as an evil that was to be excised everywhere by God's will. Yet there was still a source at the top that could be nipped in the bud, lest this sect grow even further. sprouting more and more weeds that would blossom with the woe that would eventually spread to the point of thickening all around, until it imprisoned too many minds, like some old and unattended English garden hedgerow, whose dark clouds and roots of actual evil would then begin, that which would result in the end of all life on earth. Whoever would have thought that making things up could bring so much harm upon the world?
The black stealth jet, named the Angel of Death, crossed the border and landed unobserved on a long driveway in the dark at a country house maintained by the CIA in Iran. An old man, made up to appear as old as he really was, which was 100 years, stepped out and got into a dilapidated car whose floorboards on the passenger side had worn all the way through. The old man kicked them through a bit more, making the opening even larger. He drove and parked the car near the mosque, noting the men with rifles on the roof, one even with a handheld missile that could take out a helicopter. The longtime supreme leader, anointed and ordained by Allah himself, would be arriving soon on his only outing, accompanied by 4 bodyguards, 1 fore, 1 aft, and another on each side. The leader had only to survive a walk of about 20 feet from his bulletproof limo to the doors of the mosque. As usual, any standers-by would know to stay clear or be harshly kicked away, and yet one old man was walking so slowly as to never make it out of the way, even with the shouts of the imams at the doors shooing him ever onward. The supreme leader arrived just then, eyeing the old man, then presumably dismissing him as not one to be concerned about. The bodyguards nevertheless hurled insults at the old man, the only effect being to stop him in his tracks, right in front of them, about 6 feet away, and still blocking the path to the doors. The lead bodyguard went up to kick the frail body to send it flying away, but the old and former Grandmaster West held onto his foot and shattered the bodyguard's knee with his cane. Before anyone on the ground could even react, and before those on the roof could come to bend and look straight down beyond and over some obstructions, the supreme leader was dead from a lightning chop to the throat and fell back and onto his rear bodyguard. The old man leapt over the body as if on a football run as a halfback just as an explosion went off inside the mosque, blowing through the roof, as well as another one down the street to distract anyone still overseeing the leader, during which time, as in the distraction of a magic show, the old and former leader of the Ninja Empire disappeared into the smoke and rushed toward his car. Still, a shot somehow caught him in his back, his body armor saving his life, but the impulse sending him not so much down but rolling along and onward into the car. Another man with a handheld missile soon arrived and blew the car to smithereens in a massive explosion and resultant fire. Yet, the old man was now safe underground, having gone through the opening in the floorboards and on into a manhole which he had previously uncovered, and whose lid had now been slid back into place. In fact, he was well off and moving like the wind over the water towards an exit 2 blocks away, whereupon he would begin to meet and enjoy the sunset of peaceful retirement. The stealth ninja jet was soon off and into the sky, but the country and the Air Force were now on alert. The vast array of missiles from the Angel of Death hit the Iranian planes while they were still on the ground, and the jet screamed into Mach 2 speed and disappeared into the black velvet of the night sky. On Nihao, new Grandmaster Rascalpuff sat back in his chair and relaxed when he got the word, having just smoked 2 cigars all the way through.
What darkness may next knock on our door, he thought. What contagion might be fermenting in the dark of human nature somewhere deep within? How many more ink-black rivers must we cross? The phone rang. It was Old West who said, "Strive on, my old friend. We yet prosper in one of the shimmering paths of everything, our shining pot of gold sparkling beneath life's rainbow in this far corner of the universe." "May it continue so," answered Rascal. "The future that was never to be at all now continues on in another way. All is indeed an extra time from here on out, but no guideposts remain to light the way. Whatever shall be unless it should not be. Ever and anon is never for sure, but you remain, Rascal, as ever, the butterfly at the edge of forever.
Does forever ever end dying out? Do unbreakable basics ever wear out? Well, once every 1,000 years, the bird of time flies over Mount Everest, and on some of those occasions, a part of a feather falls down upon the mountain. When the mountain has worn itself away, the end of forever has then arrived that day. All was now back to normal, but for the exponential global warming threat, some time had been bought.